Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about focusing. Now, there's this whole thing that goes around in the productivity YouTuber game of some people acting as if they study for longer than they actually do, or they work harder, or they're more hustly, or they're more productive than they actually are. And often, when I meet people in real life, they always ask, I've got a question. Are you actually as productive as you seem to be in the videos? And I'm always a bit confused about that because I don't feel like I spend a large amount of time working at all. In fact, most days I only put in about 4 hours of work each day. But for some reason, there's this impression that some people have on the internet that, oh my God, Ali Abdaal works like 24/7. And I guess you look at the vlogs, you see the videos, you see that my desk right now looks super clean, but actually you don't realize how much of a absolute shithole like the living room is. And so I think the important question isn't how can we work harder and longer, but more like how can we be more productive in the few hours that we are working? Because I'm not really a fan of like working all the time. I am a fan of working efficiently so that I can work less of the time and do other things that I enjoy in the rest of the time, like playing World of Warcraft or like playing the guitar or like hanging out with friends or whatever. And the Bible on this topic is Deep Work by Cal Newport. And there's a lot of pretty solid lessons in this. And I want to go over some of my most intriguing takeaways from this book that I've sort of tried to apply to my life and that I'm still trying to apply to my life in this video. Let's go for it. So point number one is appreciating the difference between deep work and shallow work and recognizing that deep work is generally better than shallow work. So if you see a video of me being like, hey, I studied 14 hours today, probably like 3 and a bit hours of that was actually deep work, like actually fully focused. And the rest of that time was probably just kind of screwing around or answering emails or doing little bits and bobs here and there. Deep work versus shallow work. And obviously, like for me, my best ideas and actually like meaningful progress and all the stuff that I'm working on comes from all of the deep work that I do rather than shallow work. And this is a problem because normally I don't have empty blocks in my calendar these days where I can just sit down and do some deep work. And I find that for me to actually make decent progress on something important, i.e. deep work, I need like 3 to 4 uninterrupted hours. And in fact, since I reread the summary of this book, which I often like to do with books that I've already read, I read the summaries of them, there's some pretty compelling evidence that even like 3 or 4 hours isn't enough. You actually need like a whole day of uninterrupted time to kind of get that proper focus state. People like Bill Gates use this sort of thing where, he's got his think weeks where twice a year he would take like a whole week off, go to a cabin in the woods where all his meals are prepared by a chef and like his laundry is done and all that. I'm sure his laundry is done anyway. But he would like go to this cabin in the woods for like a solid week at a time and use that to just think. And apparently back in the 90s, this was how Microsoft vision for how they're going to move forward with the internet came about. And so that's one thing I'm trying to remind myself to do more often. I was in Oxford for the last 2 days for my own think 2 days and ended up not doing very much work and ended up just hanging out with people mostly. But I feel like having that recharge was quite nice. Point number 2 from the book is that we want to treat the ability to focus like a muscle. Now, anytime I ask on my Instagram story or Twitter or whatever, hey, what are your top struggles with productivity? Broadly, people split into 2 camps. Camp number 1 is I struggle with procrastination and the motivation to get started with doing something. And camp number 2 is people who are like, I'm okay at getting started with doing the thing, but then when I start doing the thing, I can't focus and I get distracted. And a lot of people in camp number 2, like the I can't focus camp, almost wear their inability to focus as a badge of honor that, there is this perverse joy in the sense of oh my God, I am such a waste man. I don't know how to focus. Lol, I get distracted every 5 minutes on the internet. Ha 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 ha. And sort of we build this identity that we are chronic procrastinators. We're terrible at focusing. We build that up as a story in our heads. And I think one of the insights from the book is that you can actually train your focus and focus is a muscle. And, these days I don't particularly struggle with distraction, but I certainly used to back in the day. And I trained it out of myself over time by kind of spending these bits of time in focused work. 2 things I found helpful. Number 1, artificial deadlines. So there's this thing called Parkinson's law that you might be familiar with, which is that work expands to fill the time that we allocate to it. So if I only give myself half an hour to do something, I will try my best to get it done in that half an hour. Whereas if I give myself a whole day to do something, inevitably it's going to take the whole day to actually do. And the second one that I find useful is to actually just get rid of distractions by turning my phone on silent and chucking it onto the sofa, which means it's quite annoying to actually get to. And since doing this, yes, occasionally I miss a WhatsApp group chat where a friend sends a meme or something, but I kind of just give a polite LOL further down the line. And it means that generally when I'm on a computer and I don't have my Slack notifications on because I turn on Do Not Disturb on my Mac whenever I need to actually do some deep work, it means that I've just sort of over time trained that ability to focus, and that is something that's very, very doable And he's got some more tips in the book if you want to check it out. Quick thing, if you can't be bothered to actually read the book, and I wouldn't blame you because it's quite thick. It is good, but it's quite thick. There's a great website called Shortform, which is my favorite way of reading book summaries. They're not sponsoring this video. In fact, no one is sponsoring this video, but I have a link, shortform.com/Ali. It's in the video description. And if you hit that link, you'll get a free trial, and I think you'll get a bit of a discount off your subscription, something like that. I'd recommend it. It's really good. It's good if you don't know if you want to read a book yet and you just want to see the summary and then decide if you want to read a book. So I do that quite a lot. And also for me, if I've read a book like Deep Work or the 4-Hour Workweek or whatever, and I want to revisit the ideas from it, I don't reread the book generally. I just read the summary on short form. So yeah, would recommend. All right, tip number 3 from the book that I'm trying harder and harder to apply to my life, which again, I still struggle with, is this idea that we should chase only the goals that are most meaningful. Quite often these days, I'll get to the end of a day and I'll be like, you know what did I actually do today that like made meaningful progress towards a goal that I care about or something that I care about? And often I was like, well, I was just kind of in Zoom calls all day and answering emails all day and trying to sort out this random admin all day. And if I think like, which goal in my life did any of this stuff propel me towards, I think, I really find it hard to point to that. And I think a big part of that reason is that, you know, these little bits of time, 20 minutes here, half an hour here, an hour here and there, that's time that's only really suitable for shallow work rather than deep work. And what Cal Newport talks about is that a lot of the difference between shallow work and deep work is that deep work is the work that moves us towards our goals, and shallow work is those little bits like answering emails and replying to messages and like the Zoom calls and all that sort of stuff. One way that I like to help combat this, it doesn't work all the time, but I try it, is that every day I set myself a daily highlight where I'm like, okay, what is the one most important thing I need to do today? And then I schedule it into my calendar. I literally have a block in my calendar for my daily highlight, and then I try my best to do it in that time. And on the days where I actually set my daily highlight and schedule it in the time block, around 80% of the time, I then manage to get it done. And at the end of the day, I'm always like, yes, I did my daily highlight. I made progress on something that was meaningful to me at some point in the day, and that feels really good. Tip 4 from the book is to get into a routine. Now, when it comes to deep work, I sort of have a routine, whereas each morning from like 10 a.m. till like 1 p.m., I've sort of got that blocked out in my calendar where no one is allowed to book any calls with me or anything like that. And most of the time in those slots, I do manage to get some amount of deep work done. Having reread the summary of this on short form, I realized that 3 hours is also probably not quite enough time, and in an ideal world I would have like the whole day. So now what I'm trying to do is kind of block out all of Tuesday and all of Friday just for deep work, where I'm not allowed to do anything else. But if you've got a job or if you're a student or whatever and you don't quite have that capacity to literally just block out a whole day for deep work, I think this thing of having a recurring ritual where either every morning or every morning on certain days of the week for a few hours, you've got this time blocked out to work on things that are meaningful. So for you, that might be, I don't know, preparing for a university exam, or it might be learning how to code or working on your business or like learning a hobby, or in my case, it's actually making progress in writing my book, which is something I've been struggling with for the last couple of months. And he talks about here that like apparently the scientific consensus is that our overall capacity for deep work is about 4 hours a day. And so if we try and do more than 4 hours a day of deep work, it's really not going to be very deep, and our brains broadly can't like focus for that amount of time in a given day. And so don't feel bad if you get recommended one of my videos in the sidebar that talks about how I study for 14 hours a day, because it's not actually true. I went through my old like study with me videos from my university days, and even though it looked like I was studying the whole day, I like added up the amount of time where I was actually doing focused work, and it ended up being around about 4 or 5 hours each day. And some of that was procrastination as well. So I think we all need to be a little bit more realistic about what is an achievable amount of productivity or deep work to do in a day. And the goal that I'm personally shooting for is 4 hours. Finally, point number 5 that really resonated with me is to embrace the satisfaction of deep work. Like, shallow work is satisfying in that it feels good to reply to an email and then tick off like little things from the to-do list. And I get into that. And I often like convince myself that I'm being productive by doing these like shallow worky type things. But it's only really at the end of the days where I've done a decent chunk of deep work. I keep on plugging the name. It's a good title for a book. It's only at the days where I've done a solid sesh of deep work and made progress on something that feels like genuinely satisfying and like fulfilling and nice. And then I think to, like yesterday, I spent most of the day replying to emails. It didn't really feel particularly satisfying. I got to the end of the day, I was like, I'm not really sure what I've done with my time today. If you're interested in more tips on how to focus, I'd actually recommend the book or reading the summary on short form if you haven't got the time to actually read the book. And if you're interested in more tips on time management, I have a video here that explains how I manage my time as a doctor and YouTuber. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.